Well, I was thinking about The Acolyte, and thought I would weigh up what it succeeded at and what it failed at, and came to a decisive and bleak conclusion. The Acolyte is a failure in every way, which, ironically I suppose, is actually something of an achievement. It's like what the robot Ash says about the alien.
I admire its purity.
But, you then suggest, with a curt, dry nod of appreciating but not being brought around by such candor, surely the acting was a success? When the most engaging performance comes from an actor who was fairly new to the English language, you know your production is in a bad way. Most of the male actors are pussy adjacent, and this comes across in their performances. Dull, benign characters that most blokes don't find relatable. Two girl actresses who are toe-squirmingly twee, Leslie Headland's wife with acting that's as stiff as the plastic strap-on in her bedside drawer, Trinity from The Matrix coming across as so stoic she has virtually no personality at all, and Amanda Stenberg being flat in two roles. Did the show succeed with sophisticated dialogue? Did characters speak in ways that created interesting ambiguities, making them compelling, enigmatic, leaving us constantly engaged and speculating whether to trust them? Did any characters deliver searing, impassioned monologues that made us decisively in favor of them and brought the stakes into stark relief? Well, in actual fact, the dialogue fell flat on its ass and sounded like a first draft of fanfic. What if the show was a success at the genre level of being a mystery, you say, opening your palms and holding out for reason? Well, it's a pretty bleak state of affairs there too. It starts off as a mystery, but we never get invested, and our involvement falters because the structure is all over the place. What is revealed and withheld is confusing and sometimes exasperating. Characters change their motivations and perspectives without warning and little payoff. There is no framework for the show that we can stay abreast of with any particular certainty, and there is a lack of clues, hints, riddles, looming momentum, or clear and consistent plot threads. Okay, you murmur in a tone of judicious concession, but with a terse glance and inference that I may have overstepped the mark. At the very least, the pacing was a success. Sadly, the show fell flat on its face here too. From hectic fighting sequences of false foo, to interminably boring scenes of exposition in rooms, to deathly dull and ponderous drifting through the woods, to even more hectic lightsaber duels in Stygian gloom. Did the show succeed in its promotion? Reassuring wavering fans, assuaging any doubts about the identity politics, reaching out in an emphatic, conciliatory, and relatable way to old-school, enduring fans who have been burnt so many times by lackluster efforts on Disney+, who might have been receptive to a bit of frank discourse around the tone and attitude seeming to emanate from the production prior to release. Nope, a total failure here too. Leslie Headland and co. relied on sympathetic conventional media outlets, sympathetic interviewers, dismissed much of the criticism as carrying of taint of reactionary resentments. She adapted the pushback on the fly as the series progressed, and was even outdone by the posturing slapback music video released by Amanda Stenberg. With the canny smirk of someone savoring their irony in advance, of having allowed for sentiment to be aired, and now readying to set things straight, you suggest the characterization was successful. No, all of the characters are dull, with the mild exception of Squid Game guy. None of the characters become avatars for our own fantasies, none come to represent our moral compass, escapist or power desires, none evoke archetypes from our own lives, none have profound interpersonal complexities or love interests, and there are no particular differences, in some being funny, contrasted with the more serious, wise with the naive, regretful with the enlightened, or appealing types, such as the chaos agent, the comic relief, the rough character with a heart of gold, the stuck-up character who learns to be humble. In other words, so little scope for satisfying or even adequate character arcs. They're just a bunch of people. Alright, you concede in a ruffled but responsible tone, trying to be the adult in the room. Surely the show was a success in terms of spectacle. This is Star Wars, and fans expect to visit locations that are exotic, unfamiliar, that will captivate us or fill us with foreboding. That, at its best, vast planet landscapes and vistas will take on a kind of characterization of their own. Well, you're shit out of luck, because the show fails abysmally here too, because we get to visit generic forest planets and generic icy planet. Okay, you allow in a tone of measured provisional open-mindedness. Was the show successful when it comes to lore and canon? Shit no. From Ki-Adi-Mundi being retroactively made alive before he was born in a sloppy bit of script writing, to pedantic and obscure little bits and pieces at the other extreme, such as Sith or not Sith guy having a helmet made of some alloy resistant to lightsabers, the show confounds and becomes littered with ambiguities, making the whole experience charmless and frustrating. Well, without question, the show was a roaring success when it comes to diversity. Superficially, yes, but unlike some shows, such as House of the Dragon, where the diversity is naturalistic, contextual, and ceases to be apparent to the viewer as all the roles cohere and the quality of acting makes such considerations redundant, The Acolyte is custom designed to be a showcase of diversity, in a way that is jarringly on the nose, unnaturalistic and contrived, and made doubly so by the poor acting, poor characterization, poor dialogue, and poor everything, aided and abetted by a sighing disparagement of anyone who criticizes such blunt force inclusivity on any level, in any forum, with whatever distinctions. Ah, you say, with preening self-regard whilst gazing into a conceited, ironical middle distance, it must be a sure bet that the show succeeded at reveals, a finely wrought, methodically organized and paced, cleverly shrouded, intricately nuanced escalation toward a reveal that would be simultaneously shocking and deeply rewarding, as the viewer contends with the implications, retrospectively rushes back through the plot, jaw agape in admiration at the class and sophistication of the deception, and the onward headlong rush into the consequences. After 4 years of the show being on the production pipeline, Leslie Headland would have scrutinized the script over and over, finally calibrating her character arcs, embedding her character to be revealed among myriad layers of diversion, positioning other characters as decoys, with the ultimate payoff of a reveal that would resonate throughout popular culture and have people breathlessly recounting the moment around water coolers in the office the next day. Well, the show fucked this up royally too, with the reveal being, that guy who was there, and he's a Sith, but then half of Twitter argued preciously and stridently that he wasn't a Sith, but then Leslie Headland explained in an interview that he was a Sith character. Surely the music succeeded. This is Star Wars after all. It is by nature operatic, and the vast scope of the galaxy, and the themes of good and evil, of heroism and sacrifice, or sweeping romance are the natural elements for stirring music, memorable motifs, rising crescendos full of melancholic yearning or thrilling action or catharsis. Surely with a $180 million budget, the access to orchestras, hundreds of layers of synths and choirs, and the innate inspiration of John Williams as a hallowed, abiding saint, surely this show would rise to the occasion with a touching and affecting score. Well, shit out of luck here too, cause the best we got was the power of one song. Lesbian space witches caterwauling an orgasmic thrall to the thread, in a scene so appalling, half the audience nearly died from cringe before the episode was out. Perhaps the show excelled in the art of blocking, characters positioned and arranged in dynamic ways, their movement enhancing scenes as they imbue their moods and relations with subtle and flowing advances, withdrawals, pivots, and utilization of corners and dividing fixtures, and play of space. Don't be an ass. Characters are tediously static and arranged in straightforward, undynamic ways, or obvious ways. Twins doing a mirror image dance. Fat Jedi guy needing whole frames to himself. Was the show a success in the ratings? Well, notch up another loss here, because the much-touted 4.8 million initial viewing figures turned out to lapse and fade by week's end to a total 3 million less than the middling Ahsoka, which had lapsed and faded lower than the preceding iterations of Disney Plus content. Was the show fun? No. Did the show have a clear and consistent emotional tone? No. Were there any appealing romantic and sensual involvements between characters? Nuh-uh. Was there any cool tech porn? Nope. Did it spend $180 million wisely? No. Should anyone watch The Acolyte given this scorecard of successes and failures? There's only one thing I could say to some sort of devotee of Disney Plus Star Wars who would have the perseverance and the will to watch this show all the way to the bitter end.
I admire its purity.